So I hope you guys are enjoying the festival as I am, and we'll try to keep the next 45 minutes interesting and relevant, and potentially we will give you guys some topic for argument, because the topic that we're going to be discussing, verification tools in the deepfake era, is really, I mean, I don't think many people have a direct answer to how we can treat tools to verify disinformation in this era, and I'm joined by three wonderful guests. So I'm going to be starting this question for all three of you guys. If you could start by sharing what specific experience you have with dealing with AI-generated disinformation or deepfakes within your respective newsrooms and in your respective countries. And I'm going to ask the question from Stephanie first, because you have experience dealing with disinformation across 15 different languages. So yeah, over to you.
Yes, so I think regardless of markets, we've seen a proliferation of deepfakes, particularly visuals and audio deepfakes. This is especially the case since SOAR 2 became more accessible in the US, for example. So it's definitely a challenge that we're consistently seeing. Also when it comes to language, so we're seeing a lot more proliferation of text, so you're able to churn out a lot more content at a speed we've never seen before, and more interestingly, across various languages. So it's no longer just English or one of the Romantic languages, for example. They can be more niche languages where this is proliferating. And I can get into more examples of how we've seen differences with particular markets, with the teams focused on, for example, in MENA or VERA, the Americas, where we're seeing it's just slightly different, but it's based upon more media literacy and the reaction of audiences.
Can you give us specific examples, like how different populations react to probably exactly the same imported or exported disinformation?
Sure, it's relative to the context. So we see in, I'll simplify by saying Western cultures, it has to be a little bit more convincing, the visuals, which now they are. But what we've seen in, for example, Arabic-speaking countries, it's a little bit quicker to believe a cheap fake, but this is where that context point comes in. If it's emotionally charged and you're directly involved in conflict, you are going to be more likely to believe the content than you would be if you are 2, 3, 5, 6 degrees further away from that. So that's one of the things that we found when our editors discuss, like the Arabic editor or the Spanish editor discuss the topics that we're seeing. This is a frequent pattern that we see.
That's very interesting. So you're attributing it to mostly the psychological factors rather than educational factors within those countries?
It's a mix of both in my experience, so limited experience, not an empirical study here. It's a bit of both. So media literacy, so the resilience with understanding information integrity, but also if you're dealing with more polarizing issues that tap at the heart or tap at everyday issues, like for example, inflation is a major issue across all places, but perhaps conflict isn't as much in some places than in others. So that's something that we're consistently seeing is you're having an intersection of both, and it sometimes is a little bit more difficult for people to identify what is genuine information. Visual, audio, text, all of that.
It's very interesting. Celine?
Yeah. I'd just like to build on what Stephanie has said, because Stephanie speaks from a fact-checking perspective too, right? So I'm from VERA Files, which is a fact-checking organization in the Philippines. And so we deal with a lot of disinformation, and the deluge of deepfakes that we've had, I could say, focuses on 2 topics. One are scams, and the other is disaster-related disinformation. So I'll speak about scams first. So we have a huge scam problem in which, there are deepfakes being made of prominent personalities, like the president endorsing a cryptocurrency platform, or celebrities endorsing everything from diabetes treatments to pots and pans. And then also, when it comes to disaster disinformation, because we are located in the Pacific Ring of Fire and the Pacific Typhoon Ring, so we just encounter a lot of volcano eruption alerts. We just had a typhoon just as I left Manila yesterday, a super typhoon. And so after every disaster or during every disaster, there comes such a huge amount of deepfakes, just trying to exaggerate what the situation really is. And unfortunately, not everyone can tell what is a deepfake or not, because it's very emotional, especially when it comes to disasters. You just sympathize and you just share the video without really thinking, is this true or not? And so those are particular topics of deepfake disinformation we face in the Philippines.
That's very interesting and something that I didn't expect, because I just wanted to try to add a little bit of Mongolia context. So with the coming of AI, we expected like an influx of deepfake disinformation coming, especially during our 2024 elections. And we really just exaggerated the impact of AI in the context of Mongolia, because the traditional disinformation still worked pretty well. So the guys who were disseminating disinformation apparently didn't have to innovate that far and create a lot of deepfake disinformation. Although we did see some, they have kind of tested it, but probably the population didn't need that level of innovation. So it's very interesting to see that in different contexts how deepfakes and artificial intelligence has been used to create disinformation. Moses, can you tell us about like how have you seen the disinformation ecosystem evolved with the coming of AI in your country?
Okay, so as I'm concerned, I work mainly in West Africa, the Francophone Africa, and Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, but also Central Africa, Cameroon. And we see that there has been a lot of deep fakes this last 2 years and last year, and especially when concerning election. So we had some big elections, one in Côte d'Ivoire, another one in Cameroon, and some other countries. And to put an example, in Cameroon, so they had an election, and the sitting president won officially the election, and you had the opposition leader who also claimed that he won the election. So one deep fake that we had the last days is that the opposition leader who said that he won the election, you can see that deep fake of video or image of him swearing in, and that had been taken for truth by many people. And even in my newsroom, some come to me and said that, have you seen this one? And we need to check it. And then when we verify, it was a deep fake. So that's a concrete example. And we had other examples like this in Côte d'Ivoire. And the deep fakes are used by the opposition, but also by the people who are governing the country, like the ruling parties. And one example that's of a deep fake that has been very famous is in Sudan, and you were talking about emotion. We had a picture that has been shared maybe by million people with a woman holding a child, and as people are mobilizing for Sudan, so they want to share the emotion, and that picture was false. But of course, people continue to share it. And so the question is, in terms of emotion or in terms of mobilization for a crisis, can we allow deepfake or not? My opinion is maybe why not, but at least people should be aware that the picture they are sharing is false.
Oh, that's very interesting. So we can attribute the dissemination of deepfakes and the level of trust people have on those contents to the level of education, media, and digital literacy in those countries, as well as the emotional state and the imminence of the issue that's being shown through the deepfakes, right? So we've talked a little bit about the risks of artificial intelligence creating disinformation that people actually believe in. let's talk about the tools that you guys are using within your newsrooms to help you guys better combat disinformation in your contexts. Let's talk about both tools that are developed by third-party companies, which we refer to mostly big tech, and tools that you guys are building within your newsroom. So how has your experience been in that regard? And what tools are you using?
Well, we've tried and tested a lot of different tools. One in particular that we use a lot is Hive moderation, which detects AI-generated videos and images, the likelihood of it being AI manipulated, and also which program was likely used to generate that piece of content. That has been so helpful in our work. However, so I developed our protocol for fact-checking AI-generated content. And what I have instructed my team is never to rely just on a tool to build your fact check on, because we know that tools can be unreliable. It depends on the quality of the content that you came across and you upload to the tool for it to say with confidence that something has been manipulated or not. So that's one huge issue. Apart from Hive, we also use InVid. Who here is familiar with InVid? Yes, okay, I see a few people, okay. We love InVid. It's a tool, I think it was developed by a European consortium. AFP is involved, Deutsche Welle. And so this year they introduced new parts of the tool that detects deepfakes, videos, images, and audio content. So I love InVid because we're able to connect with the people behind InVid and potentially ask them more about the findings. And then lastly, I would say that has been developed by a big tech company is SynthID, which is having a session later today. So SynthID is developed by Google, and it detects AI-generated content by Google's tools. I think that is good, but also it's limiting in a sense that it can only detect AI-generated content by the platform.
Stephanie?
Yes, so at Reuters News, we don't have a specific tool that we've created ourselves, but what our team has done is examine dozens upon dozens of tools that are out there. Essentially, my inbox is flooded with, we've got the magic tool, and this is the one. And there's a lot of snake oil out there, as you've all probably have seen. What we're trying to establish is what I like to call creating our own Swiss Army knife. So which is the one that's really good at detecting audio deepfakes, which is the one that's really good at visual deepfakes, and then being able to deploy those when you need it. That being said, it's exactly what you're saying, which is they act as signals. It is not the end-all, be-all. So let's say, for example, we have run an audio deepfake analysis with a tool, reliable tool, and it says that that is not a deepfake. It does not prove that that is for sure Donald Trump, because these, if I'm using a Donald Trump example with the audio deepfake, if it doesn't pick it up, it doesn't prove that, because you could have someone who's really good at impersonating him, and these audio deepfake tools will never catch that because it's doing exactly what it said it would do, but there are limitations. And then also what we found is essentially, if you're looking at these tools that are third-party platforms, let's say, you created one, and you create your OpenAI and your Google. I may invest in Duya's tool, but every time OpenAI updates its platform or Google updates its platform, Duya has to play catch up. So it's always one step behind. Anytime there's kind of an update, you're going to have to constantly do the machine learning, constantly have those relationships, so that if I was to invest in that tool, that's a risk I have to take into account. And as reporters, as a news agency, we want to be as close to the primary source as possible. And this is where examples like SynthID, I know there was a session with SynthID earlier, I find that a fantastic tool, because it's Google itself saying something was created using a Google platform. And I would love to see more tech companies establish that kind of tool that's accessible for others, because I don't think anyone's saying AI is bad, right? There are so many fantastic things about AI. My workflow is getting more efficient with AI. My Python coding is suddenly getting so much better. But we just need transparency around it. And I think that's what everyone across the board is saying. It's just there's different levels of transparency and that accessibility to establish said transparency.
Yes, so I'll resonate with what Celine was saying. So we use many tools, but working on Africa, we got frustration that some of the tools that exist don't match with what we are looking for. And so that's has been a big problem. And this is why in our own organization, we try to build our own AI chatbot that can help to fight fake news. Yeah.
Yeah, may I ask Celine and Moses to react to the use of potentially NGO or smaller media organization developed tools and tools developed by big tech? Because as you mentioned, we really do have to play catch up, which is time consuming, it's resource constraining. But like in our situations, like countries that have other languages than English, like is that a necessity? Like how do we deal with that?
Well, at least when it comes to tools developed by smaller organizations, whether it's a civil society organization or a media organization, we're okay with using it. In fact, the development of it is much more personal because they reach out to you to know how would this fit in with your work, which I appreciate as someone potentially benefiting from this tool. I would love to be part of the process of how you develop these kinds of tools, as opposed to it's not always the case that huge platforms reach out to us asking our perspective. So sometimes you just get a random email, like, can you test out this tool for us? But they've already made it, you're not part of the planning process for it. But like Stephanie's perspective on Synth ID, for example, I love that they have developed their own tool because at least you have much more confidence, I guess, because it's their tool saying, oh yes, this was made with our technology. I think we have more platforms needing to do that as well. And hopefully they can work with us too. So that, we use so many tools. We can't keep track of all of them. So maybe there's a way to integrate that too, so that it's not so many tools you have to use.
Yeah. Exactly.
Moses. So I do agree. I think it's very good to have those platforms who have like the main tool to build tools, but I also think it's really important to be able to work with people from developing countries, and some people are already talking about AI colonization. Many companies are building AI tools, but they don't connect with the local people. And so when you don't connect with the local people before you build, so you have tools that don't match with the needs. And so it's really important that the platform understand that necessity.
On top of understanding necessity, can you elaborate more on serving under low resource languages? Because the tool you built, Akili, it serves French-speaking African community, right? So like in terms of languages that are spoken by fewer people, like where do we stand on things?
So that's a big challenge. So we wanted to build an AI chatbot to fight against fake news. So it's easy to do it in French. It's easy to do it in English. But when you want to do it in local languages, like Bambara that is spoken in West Africa, you don't have the materials, you don't have the data. And so we started from scratch to build something. And so this is where the platform also have a big job to do, to make data also available, or to maybe find work with local people to try to gather information. And for us, it has really been a big challenge. So we came up with the tool that it works, but we still need to work on it to make it better. And so far, I think, big platform have forgot the non-English and French languages. And me working on Africa, of course, if I do fact-checking in French and English, of course, people who can read, who can write, they can get the information. But how about the moms and the dads who don't speak English or French? So how do we reach to them? So that's the big challenge. This one for us was very important, to have content in their own language so that everyone can fact-check in their language.
So I wanted to kind of structurize what we're talking about. So we're talking about verification tools, but these tools are used across different processes of our everyday work, right? During the verification process, in terms of gathering information, in terms of bringing our fact-check contents or contents across to the audiences. So across all these processes, where do you find using artificial intelligence most efficient? And where do you think we don't necessarily have to bring in artificial intelligence at this point? Do you want to start?
I can start, yeah. I'd say it starts even before the verification process. It's with the monitoring process. I mean, that's a huge pain point for us because there's just way too many pieces of content to monitor and not enough eyes to flag them. And so any AI tool that can help us with, flagging, at least that these are the posts that are most viral right now. That at least helps us narrow down which to prioritize. And then where else? I think in the verification process, definitely. Our protocol our rule is not to let AI do our work completely, but it's very welcome for it to assist us in our work. One thing we have tried to do is to connect with more deepfake detection experts. We are admittedly, not digital forensic experts. So when a tool says, there's some language sometimes in the tool that we can't always understand, or the nuances of it. So one thing we've done is we connected with the Deepfakes Analysis Unit in India. It's part of the larger Misinformation Combat Alliance. So the DAU, or the Deepfakes Analysis Unit, it's built of academics, disinformation, or deepfake researchers, and fact checkers that have the say, have the K to say that something is a deepfake, or that they can explain, if Hive moderation says it's 79% sure that it's a deepfake, okay, what else do we need to consider? So we connect with our experts to help us make sense of these numbers or these results from tools. So always with human intervention, never just relying on the tools alone.
And the tool that you guys built, Seek, which some of you might have heard during the lightning talk, it works mostly towards making fact-checked information accessible to more people, easy to find, right?
Yes.
So that's probably also one area where you feel artificial intelligence is useful.
Oh yes. It's really, we're always trying to figure out new ways to connect with our audiences, right? And one thing we realize is that whether you're a student, you're a researcher, you're a teacher, when we talk to them during our user research phase, they are actually using AI. They're using it to kickstart their research processes. And so we thought, if they're already there, then it's okay. Perhaps that is the space where we need to meet them too. Especially when you look up, for example, scam issue Philippines on Google. I tried it before coming here. We don't appear in the first 3-4 pages on Google. So we're always trying to find ways to improve our reach. And that's why we developed Seek.
Stephanie, let me rephrase the question. Same question still. So in terms of using artificial intelligence tools, in which part of the verification process or the news creation process do you think fact checkers can be more hands-off and rely more on the artificial intelligence tool? And in which parts of the process do you think we need more human agency, more human interaction, and have less dependence on artificial intelligence?
So when it comes to AI as a tool, as part of the reporting process, we find it really helpful when it comes to you're analyzing a 40-minute speech. To just run it through a proper AI-powered transcription tool to summarize, with a very important caveat that you still have to double-check, fact-check, the fact-check of what it's spitting out, because it's not always accurate. That's one. I think, to your point as well, for making fact-checks available for a wider audience, as people are no longer going to google.com, they're going to, they're opening ChatGPT or Claude or Llama, whatever. I haven't seen that fact checks go to the top. There are various reasons for that, but I think this is an opportunity where AI can be leveraged to get reliable information more to the front. And then when it comes to the rest, with using AI, I think they're good at streamlining, making things more efficient. But going to Celine's point as well, we're always just going to have humans in the loop, which will slow things down a little bit. But it's a quality assurance that I just do not see we're going to have to step away from anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Moses.
Yeah, I also think that human intervention is very important, and especially if you remember at the beginning of ChatGPT, they were not putting the sources or from where they get the information, and so people started to say it's not, that's problematic. They just collect the data and the information, and you don't know where it's coming from. And so in the verification process, I think, you can rely on AI for certain things, but at the moment, human intervention is necessary. And the tool we built, we give chance to the user that when he is not satisfied with the answer that was given by AI, he can reach to the newsroom and ask more verification. So for us, it's a way. So this is what I call alliance between AI and journalists and fact checker.
So this is a new information. So this morning during the opening panel discussion, we heard from 3 great editors from 3 major newsrooms. And they talked about their use of AI in their newsrooms. And I remember hearing kind of a thought process around whether it's really necessary to put a disclaimer on all uses of AI, as long as in the final stage there is human agency or human is taking the responsibility on that. I just wanted to, for the sake of this conversation, get your reaction to that. Because like the practice of fact-checking and journalism, however very much interconnected, is slightly different. So from a fact-checking perspective, what do you think about that? Yeah, let's...
Yeah, okay. So our approach is heavily informed as well by what our users think. Like, we love to involve our users in our process. So when we developed Seek, for example, something that came up from our users is that they want a lot of transparency. Transparency about the limitations of any AI-powered products that we are developing. Transparency about potentials for error. And so that's how we approach using AI in our newsroom as well. We try to be as transparent as we can. So we are currently in the process of refining our AI policy, which would be made public as well. So when it comes to the disclaimers, we put a lot of disclaimers in our AI chatbot about this is an experimental tool. It has a potential for error. So always please double check what you read or something like that. There's 2 versions of that you can see on the web page of our chatbot. But when it comes to, let's say, developing social media captions with the help of AI, but then always with a human at the end, an editor at the end, that is something that's a little less clear for us. Maybe it could be a discussion for us. Or like, I think it would be weird to put at the end of every social media caption to say that this was generated with the help of AI. I don't know if users would see that as something trustworthy, or that would it make them trust us less? Yeah, so I'm curious to hear how other newsrooms are approaching it.
For us, we're guided by the trust principles. That's our North Star, which is about being unbiased and transparent. And so it goes back to the point of transparency. And so we do have guidelines around this where we would disclose if something was essentially, if we reached that point where it was being primarily written by AI, that would be disclosed. Or let's say there's an analysis where you're crunching through hours and hours of footage, we would disclose that AI was also used, for example. But I think the key point is meaningful transparency. So yeah, I mean, are we going to put that we Googled something as part of the reporting efforts? No, and I think the same is, okay, if you're looking in ChatGPT to get some leads, it's not important. But if it was instrumental to the final product, that should be disclosed in some way, some shape or form.
Moses?
Yes, I do agree with the fact that you need to be transparent. So far as I'm concerned, so when we use AI to reshape an article, so we put in the end of the article that AI has been helpful for this. And yeah, so we try to be transparent as we can, and concern the AI, the fact-checking tool, everyone knows that it's AI, and so we are transparent about that. But we also try to say to people, this is a tool, this is AI, it's not 100%, it cannot do all the job. So you may find some hallucination, that's quite normal, and yeah, just be transparent.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that conversation was pretty interesting and something we need to think about. Like I said, we shouldn't, I mean, it's kind of foolish to put a disclaimer on a caption, right? It's as if we're saying I typed it on a Microsoft Word, but like, where is the limit? I think this is a food for thought for all of you guys, and as much as I keep thinking. And after one question, I'll be moving on to the audience, and if you have any questions for our guests here, then the floor will be open for you guys. So finally, I want to ask you guys, we talked a lot about technology, artificial intelligence, tools, but if we want to effectively combat disinformation, like, what more do we need to be thinking about? What more do we need to be talking about at this point? Because it's as if artificial intelligence is all that there is to it, right? It's the golden solution for everything, but it probably isn't. So what else do we need to be thinking about now? Let's start with
I think we have 2 points. One point is that media literacy for me is very important, and because by the end we are talking about human receiving information and how do they respond to that message. So media literacy in schools, so in my organization we do that in school, in high school, and also with college students. For me, that's very important, yeah, to try to educate people how to detect a fake news or deepfake. That's one point. And the second point is, once again, we come to platforms. So, of course, journalists are engaged in the fight against fake news, but when the platform creates the tools like OpenAI, I think organizations like this one should also be engaged in the fight against misinformation. So it should not be just the job of the journalists. It should be the job also of the platforms and all of the ecosystem working on AI and technology.
Yes, so for me, kind of touching on the point I made earlier, so often, whether I'm in the panel or watching a panel in recent years, the question is often framed around, so what are journalists doing, or what are you doing in certain industry? And I think the question needs to pivot to saying, what are the companies doing to make these tools more transparent, and so that people can understand why something is AI without having to do, click 20 different times, because my job full time is looking at this, and it's very difficult. So I can't imagine if someone's got 3 kids on each hip trying to run to work. No one has the time for that. So I think I would like to see consistently the question asked, the people creating these tools, what are we doing to make sure that we can transparently understand it was created using your tool, and how is it accessible? I think that's, for me, a big one.
I resonate with both what Moses and Stephanie said. I'd say, admittedly, fact-checking a lot of the times tends to be a reactive process, right, or practice by nature. You respond to disinformation when it comes or when it goes viral. But I want to address the supply side. Like that's where I want to focus to. Like, how do we prevent deepfakes from, duping so many people? How do we get all these programs that allow people to exploit it, allow their programs to be exploited to create deepfakes? How do we get them to make it easier for people to say that, oh, this is a fake content? Or, at least be able to make it easier for fact checkers and for platforms also to identify that this is a deepfake. I think there needs to be more focus on that, and not just allow people to just create content. Like, what are you doing to allow people to make this content identifiable that it's a deepfake? I think for me that is one of my biggest pain points as a fact checker. Like, we just keep on dealing with all this crap that that comes out, but like, what about all these people behind them? I mean, the programs that people use to create deepfakes, they aren't necessarily nefarious programs, right? Like, as some of these programs, they're just used to create educational content. But then there are people who just have really bad intentions.
Just to add to that point, it's kind of like a catch-22. Like, you've got people who believe in it, or those who are suspicious. And I think, like, as a society, we're reaching an interesting point where you're just not believing anything you see, which is really confronting, because we're not living in a shared reality anymore, which there are bigger implications with that. But I think, that's, to your point, I think that's why it's so important. Because it would be nice if we lived in a shared reality again, instead of saying, is that real, is that fake? I myself would be like, that's fake. And then I find out when I do the research, oh, it's a Reuters photo. So even I myself am very skeptical, even more so than I was 5 years ago. And I'm sure many people in this room are as well.
Just to follow up on that, do you think the personalization, which we are better able to do now with the development of the technology and artificial intelligence, we are seeing less of that shared reality? Like, I don't know.
Personalization?
Yeah.
Like a bigger echo chamber?
Yeah. I mean, we're looking into that so that we can bring our fact-checked, high-quality information to more people in a more targeted manner. But it's actually essentially the same thing that's creating those echo chambers, isn't it?
It's part of it. And there's a lot of work that we all do, that we know we're not going to reach people so far down the rabbit hole. So how much energy are we going to extend, tight-roping down that? Who are the ones that we can get over the line and ensure they have reliable information that they need to act. So I think it's definitely a consideration, but unfortunately we live in an algorithm world. So for example, going to your point of finding misinformation, is just so much. I have 2 separate accounts. One for my misinformation, I'm training my algorithm to consistently feed in a lot of content that you would probably be disturbed by. And then I have the one that I personally look at to keep in touch with family that's untouched by that algorithm. And I would like to think it has a little bit more integrity in that algorithm. But personalization is a plus, but it has its major limitations, I think, especially for those who are out of reach.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes for questions and reactions. So while we're waiting for, okay, yes.
Maybe the mic says, everybody can choose. Yeah. So I'm Andrea. I am a diplomat, and I used to be a journalist, so when I was a free person. I have a question because we have a fantastic panel which represents several corners of the world. When you studying disinformation, have you identified a country or a region that, in your view, is particularly prone to disinformation, to being a victim of disinformation? And if yes, if you've identified a country or a region that is really the victim, the permanent victim, is that related to something which is factors which are universal, like, I don't know, the lack of media literacy, as you were saying, or is this something truly specific, for example, related to the specific context of that country? Could you elaborate on your comparative experiences of disinformation? Can you just say, this really, wow, astonished me, a big deal?
Do you have any?
So prone to being more a victim of
Yeah.
misinformation.
Yeah.
Oh, I can start. As I'm concerned, so I work on Africa. Maybe I won't use the term victim, but at least there is a widespread of misinformation. In Africa, you have now everyone in the smallest village, you have people who have access to mobile phone. That was not the case 10 years ago. And they have access to internet, they are on WhatsApp, they are on Facebook. So of course, there was spread of misinformation. So that mobile phone access that has been great, it's good, but it also came up with, of course, fake news. So you have that, and yeah, you were talking about media literacy. And once again, you have people who cannot read to verify things, like so I'm between Mali and France, and the Malian diaspora in France. When you are from the diaspora and when you send a message to your family, they will say, oh, he's in France, also this is true. And because the guy or the mom who is in Bamako in Mali cannot read, and he or she relies only on the people he thinks are very high educated, or those people they also spread fake news. So
I can just answer really quickly. It's not an answer you will like. There's just not enough evidence. I think it's really hard to understand the true impact of how misinformation shapes decisions that each person makes. We cannot quantify it, at least not yet. So for example, one may think the US is more resilient than another one, but for example, with the US election, I specifically saw in Georgia where there were people putting out, perhaps well-intentioned even, the KKK is out there, don't go vote. How can we ever measure how many people didn't vote in that precinct? It's near impossible to detect until misinformation reaches such a scale where potentially there are deaths. So we're seeing measles cases. We've yet to see if there's a direct correlation due to misinformation about vaccines, but anyway, we still have to find out.
I can add evidence to that. So media and information literacy, I believe, is the most important thing in combating disinformation, because it's just like during COVID, with the coming of vaccines, we were finally able to combat it rather than like putting everybody back in their home, right? So one evidence I can mention in the example of Mongolia is almost 10 years ago, Mongolia had a mandatory human papillomavirus vaccination. That was largely prone to disinformation, and this causes like, what's the word? You cannot have a baby after getting that vaccine, things like that. So the government decided to stop that mandatory vaccination program, and 10 years later, actually 9,000 women died of this preventable disease. So it's a very tangible evidence of what disinformation has, like what kind of impact disinformation has in different contexts. So yeah, media and information literacy. And if I could add to your previous question, I think what I'm saying is in areas where there are conflicting interests, people are made more prone to disinformation as well. Like in Mongolia, for instance, which is the only region I know, we have influx of disinformation coming from Russia, information coming from China, and also our internal politics playing, as well as uneducated or low-educated people who are contributing to that information and adding layers of trust onto disinformation that has been disseminated from coordinated sources. And we have more question there. Oh, sorry.
We're out of time.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, and you can find our guests throughout today and tomorrow as well. And if you have anything to elaborate, yeah.
Yeah, we do have, yeah. Applause.